Thank you. Whee. Laos. Yay! And in other sign language we do this to say thank you for being here and hello as well. So this is nice actually for anyone who's doing selfie. Oh yeah, look. You should look at yourselves. Great. So my name is SERVANE and I'm going to take you on a journey in the shape of a U. So all you need, or you don't need to know much more at that stage, because what we're going to do together is put in sort of a little tool what you've learned today, what you've seen today. So I'm very lucky that all my comes is very well. Have you got a paper with you? A piece of paper, or a tablet, or a mobile? You can scribble or doodle. As long as you keep watching the presentation at some point, it's great. Okay, so, and we'll show each other, how it ends up. So at the end of this little co-workshop, you'll end up with a visual aid and to put all the points that you've learned today, and some tips and questions to go away with. I hope I can answer some of them. And this talk might be a bit of a ride, but obviously, and hopefully it will end up very well. So the first part will be a bit grim, and the second part will be a bit happy. Hopefully. You ready? So a little show of hands, how many of you are already running a social business on the side? Yeah, one. Cool. And how many of you have been involved or are involved in a community project at the moment, or volunteer? Don't raise your hands. Hi, Stretch, it's good for you. Great. An activist, not just a click activist, but an activist, campaigner, putting some posters where it's illegally, which you can't put them, no? Activist? Okay, so there's a lot of volunteers and people who are involved in the community, that's great. So, let's see how it helps. When I would ask to talk today, I said, you know, it's all about social entrepreneurship, so let's not worry about it. And my question to you is, you thought that social entrepreneurship could change the world? How many of you thinking that? Well, it won't. It won't. And I think you shouldn't worry about it in the first place anyway. So let's start the drawing. If you can draw a U on your paper. It's not that difficult, is it? Make it big because you're going to take notes along the way. We live in a world that is driven up the wall by a very, very specific type of economy. That's the economy of loneliness. Put the EL on top of the U. And that economy of loneliness is articulated at global, at community, and at an individual level. And you'll see why. And this is what makes a lot of social entrepreneurs, let alone entrepreneurs, fail, actually. And I'll tell you how it's connected. This is what prevents us to maximize our impact, let alone make an impact. So let's see how it works around the world. You can see at the moment, especially in the news, and it's been like that for a while now, how, for instance, conflicts are driven by scarcity of commodities, you know, water, food, and our populations are displaced, and actually you don't know what causes what. Then you have the economy of war that's jumping on top of it, and it's just a massive mess. This is dramatic. Then what happened at community level? Please draw the world and then the community thing. Let's think for a second how the economy of loneliness is articulated in our communities, in our villages. Think of your high road. How many of you live in a sort of quite large city? They're here. Yeah. I don't know if you've noticed, but from Barcelona to London, from Brussels to even Vilnius, I spotted a few names yesterday coming back from the airport. The same shops are popping up, same brands, same iPhones, the same X Factor, the same food throughout the year. Don't you find it a bit scary? Doesn't it make you ask questions? I think that's the uniformization of, these high roads is what makes some cities lose their face, lose their identity. And you know, who gains from it? Not you, not the local community. The proceeds of these trades are going into some fiscal no man's lands, and this is scary. I want to talk to you about your neighbors. How many of you, how long was that ago when you had a street party with your neighbors? Any show of hands? Wow. Yes? Amen, test volunteers. When was the last time you had your neighbor over for dinner? Yeah. Do you know their first name? Your neighbor's first name? You know that, yes. Mine is Emma and Luciano. How tight is your community canvas? Shame, shame, shame. And you think that social entrepreneurship can solve all this? And you think, well, I'll try it anyway because I'm going to win this competition, and that's the whole point of it. And I think it's great to think that. It's good. So now I'd like you to sit even more comfortably because we are going to go to the individual level. I'm going to talk to you about you. The economy of loneliness can hit you at personal level when you least expect it. And as Mandy, you were the proof of that in your talk, it can be massive. So as a young adult, I was surrounded by community activists, and I wanted to be one myself. I didn't have a clue how I would do that. I wanted to help people have a local impact, where local people have an impact, like a lot of you in the room. And then I established my company, it's called OGUNTE, in 2001. I was in the Netherlands then. I wanted to create social change through activism. And I wanted to really put together around the table community leaders and start creating prototypes and do things for the community. And I started to have conversations with these leaders and people from the Netherlands, but also people from other countries, Brazil, Kenya, etc., France. And there were teachers, there were musicians, developers, there were entrepreneurs, there were campaigners, there were funders, a couple of government representatives lost on the way. And we knew at that point that to make change, you need to put your head above the parapet. You can't be hiding. You need to take risk and show up. You also need to break silos. You know, you can't just talk to, if you're a musician, you can't just only talk to musicians. If you're a student, you can't just only talk to students. And you always have to act with the future in mind. And of course, that was great, that was exciting. I didn't know much at the time how I could implement all these ideas. It was very hectic in my head. I was running around like a headless chicken until I met someone in Brazil who had exactly the same ideas than me, but in the right order, and that was a revelation. And so I started to put a bit more structure into workshops and programs we were building to support community development. And then one day, you know, as you do when you have a company, you look at your mailing list and who are your customers? And I realized that all the people who were attending our workshops, our events, our conversation were mainly women. And they were at the nexus of many different worlds. They were not just NGOs, they were not just women in business. I didn't know how to talk to them anyway because I'm not a cupcake specialist or fashion specialist, so there was little hope in there. There were actually women social entrepreneurs at the nexus of all these worlds. And they were aligning their social purposes with the need to create sustainable businesses, so sustainable models, not just, you know, for the ventures, but for themselves too. They needed to make a living. They wanted to be in charge. They didn't want to be in the back seat, and they certainly didn't want to be patted on the head. You know, have you heard that? Have you had that? Some of you social entrepreneurs, when people say, oh, you're doing social entrepreneur, oh, cool, good for you. That when you start, it's okay. After 10 years, it's tiring, isn't it? Why female social entrepreneurship? I started to realize that that was good. It was a good place. And the name of the organization, actually, I realized it was a female spirit. So it was there all the way. So it was great because by doing this business, I could see that I was accomplishing my wish to be an activist and stand on my 2 feet as an activist. I wanted to pay tribute to my mom because she had been a remarkable single mom and rose my brother and I with success. And I wanted to prove as well that the story that is being told in the world comes from a masculine perspective. And by doing that, we're just losing out of an enormous amount of female talent. It's not just about women only. It's about why don't we have a conversation with everybody on board? And then in 2009, that economy of loneliness hit me in the face. I was pregnant with my first child in a relationship that had known better times. And when I was coming back from the job I loved, in my place, the house was grim, was not fun, was very sad. And when I was 5 months pregnant, I got dumped. My partner and I broke up. And the strength that had been with me all these years, I was an activist, an entrepreneur, a spokesperson for women in social business, etc. All of this, that vanished at once. And I felt very vulnerable. So it was not so much the loss of my partner, well, that hurt, but it was the inability to make robust decisions that hit me in the face. The business crumbled. I had no revenue. I couldn't afford paying the rent of my house. I had a baby on its way, and I was on the verge of homelessness. So here's the picture. I could help thousands of women social entrepreneurs, but I was incapable of helping myself. And some of my friends called in for support. So they were great girls. I love them for what they did, but it didn't help me make wiser decisions. What I needed at the time was a good set of social prescription. What I needed from my GP is not to say, well, here's a paracetamol. I needed for him to guide me in the networks, the local networks, but he couldn't do that. I realized that whilst I was taking care of others, I couldn't take care of myself. I was experiencing that economy of loneliness, the inability to connect me with my future, the future of my child, the future of my community, and the future of a wider society. It was totally disconnected. That was the economy of loneliness. But then one day I woke up, literally, physically, and in my soul, and I decided to just do something very simple. I said no. Continue drawing. And within a few months, just because I had these two letters high up on my head and I learned to say no, I started to go back on track and make wiser decisions. They were all driven by certain values. Follow the script. And the values that are still with me today are generosity, reciprocity, boldness, and all of them can be put in the same package, that sense of connectedness. And that it's just something that just stayed with me, and it guided me like a leitmotiv and says, is this something that connects me to the world, that connects me to the community, that connects me to the future of my child? And this is what I wish for you, is that economy of connectedness. So we're going to go up the U now, it's a bit later. So I realized that if I could do that at an individual level, how I could, imagine what it could do, what ripple effect it could have later on if I started to apply this in my community, in my social venture, and as an activist. It could make quite a big amount of waves. So when you go out this afternoon or tonight, when you look at your case, explore that economy of connectedness. How are things interrelated? You connect with your village. So let's talk about that community thing. Since my personal adventure, I realized that I needed to have a tighter link with my neighbors, and I needed to understand themselves much better. I also needed to get out of my comfort zone. It's easy for me to go into the social enterprise conference, but I found originally it was a bit of a drag to go to the local women's center. But actually I learned to do all this because I met women who were like me and I was like them as well. We could share the same story. How do you connect with your neighbors? Your neighbors can be effectively the guys or the women or the kids who live next door, but they can be as well, your fellow students. Do you really know them? The people you go out in pubs on Saturday with? Who are they? What's the life of these students behind Facebook page? Who are they when they're depressed or sad? Have all sorts of ailments which you know nothing about. How quick are you judging them? Their neighbors can be, the other folks in the youth club. They can be the elderly people or people in the care home. Do you know them? Do you know how they live? There could be the drug addict in the corner. Maybe he's got a PhD. Maybe she has a PhD. And even if she hasn't, they all have a story to share, a story to tell that helps you understand and helps you make sense of the world around you. So what do? You put your empathy hat on. And you'll need that when you're going to look at your case, because you need to be not just a social entrepreneur, you need to design a system. And how can you design a system if you know jack about your neighbor? Okay? So look at Mandy's story, how she built a system, a bit by bit, trying to understand all the stakeholders in a community. Not just the good guys, the bad guys. And she created a story that involved everybody. And everybody had to look toward a better future. So you've all read, these bullet points in all this Facebook stuff and the memes allowed to define what success means to you. Well, it's not just financial, obviously. For me, it's about having that extended sense of connectedness. Okay? These relationships, this conversation, this challenging that people put in your face, these breakups, and how you overcome them. It's about being curious and being able to be challenged and embrace your own potential, go where you never wanted to go. And it's not just about spreadsheets, okay? It's engaging in common actions for good, not just click thing, but really getting out and just being there for real in the flesh. So if you want to make a difference and support that economy of connectedness, I'm always saying to start by being a fabulous neighbor. So you probably think, so how am I going to do that for the world? Because that's all good here, I can see there are things, but how can I influence COP21 conference that's taking place at the moment? How can I influence the global village? Well, there's a concept, I don't know if you know about it, it's called the circular economy. Do you know the circular economy? Anyone? Well, that's the key, and it's actually in action. So it's an economy that goes from cradle to cradle, that's restorative, that's regenerative. It accounts for its loss and gains, not just in financial terms, but in terms of well-being, natural resources, transparency, gender equality. Because of that circular economy, I made a decision to eat less meat. If I couldn't preach about environment and having meat every day of the week. Doesn't make sense. You can Google as well the results about if everyone at the same time could reduce their consumption of meat. Have a look at what it would do. Okay? And it's not about preaching and just cut everything right down. And if you can, that's great, but stop 5 days a week and on Saturday buy organic. It's all cheaper anyway if you round up economically. The happy story. Now OGUNTE is a community interest company. We're a B Corp as well. We've reached 5,000 women. We have started the first incubator for women social entrepreneurs. That was great. We do a lot of financial literacy, but we also talk about the intimate thoughts and your behavior change that you need to go through if you really want to make success. Okay? And we teach people as well to tell their stories. And finally, we have an invitation for women social entrepreneurs in the room. Look, raise your hand again, girls. raise your hands? If you're a woman, raise your hand. Great, so I invite you, because by tonight you would have all created something like social enterprise-ish kind of thing, to pin yourself on the map.ogunte.com, where you can connect with other women social entrepreneurs. And my silly aim is to connect 1 million social entrepreneurs, to create a mini tsunami of change, to have our voice heard, you know, just because we need to address the balance. So, yes, it's not just a story about, it's not just a business thing, it's about addressing political issues and creating a structure for peace. That's a big job. I'm working on an economy of connectedness, and an economy that understands that all the ingredients I've talked about, environment, peace, inclusion, education, social business, they're all interconnected ingredients. They're not nice to haves. They don't come second after policing, armed trades, and industry. Wow. Social entrepreneurship, this is not an act of grandeur, but it's the sum of everyday actions. And they start within. So my wish for you guys and girls is for you to continue building this economy of connectedness and power a better world. There you see now a hope that you shouldn't worry about social entrepreneurship. Action.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is SERVANE. So I was sitting there. Do you remember our conversation prior to the beginning of the conference? Tomasz, yourself, somebody else as well joined us, and we were talking about shutting down our mobile phones every once in a while, right?
Yeah.
Talking to one another. Do you think that talking to one another is one of the key factors that would help us overcome the economy of loneliness to a certain extent?
It's talking, it's having the empathy, it's asking better questions. It's not just having two monologues. It's asking questions that engage the other person in a place that they haven't thought where they haven't thought they could go. It's going side by side. It's not prescribing. It's not telling other people what to do. It's just be curious and candid and honest, and believing that the other person can really go a long way. Okay?
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience have any questions for SERVANE?
Oh, that's at the end.
Yeah, there's somebody. Yeah,
Speak
please.
very loud.
Yeah.
Hi. Quick question. Maybe I've missed it in the beginning. How do you make money?
By trade.
What do you trade?
As service, so coaching programs that are bought either by intermediary or infrastructure organizations, foundations, either to manage their programs or to have a group of women social entrepreneurs being coached, for instance, or women social entrepreneurs themselves. So it's by trade, we're a social enterprise. I try to shy away from grants because all that reporting is, I like reporting with our M&E platforms, but when I have to adopt someone else's M&E platform, it's just distracting. So it's by trade, by contract. Does it answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, please. Yes, please, if you could.
Hi.
Thank you for your presentation and for your honesty sharing your story. My question is, when you hit that bottom, where your values are shaken and you probably are doubting yourself and all, everything what was behind, what helps you to do that? Because I had similar experience, and it feels that from trust, community, and everything is that you go to the other end of the bar.
Do you know, I said these two little letters no, but it's also listening to some people have an inner voice there. There is an inner voice lost in the chaos that is actually guiding you. There's another inner voice that it's in your belly, not at 12 o'clock because it's been distracted by the food you should put in it, but the inner voice, the instinct or the intuition, okay? And when it doesn't feel right, listen to this voice. Listen to these guts. The guts have got a brain. I'm not going to go into detail, you can Google that. But it's not very profound. It's just at one moment, you got to stop feeding the depression, feeding that loneliness route. It's hard, but it's a training. It's day by day. But start with no, getting rid of stuff, as you say in your story. you know? It's not to be a happy bunny per se, because that's not clever either. It's really saying no, step by step. What do you want? My thing is also, I said, if I'm homeless tomorrow, so I would have had to be homeless to put myself on the homelessness list so that I could get some sort of hostel accommodation, so that I would get some sort of benefit stuff. And I said, you know what? There's no guarantee I won't, I'll stay only 15 days and I will get a flat. But no. You know what? I could stay in my rented accommodation, and I talked to Emma, who happened to be my landlord's daughter, Emma, my neighbor, and she said, okay, we can have another tenant here that rents that little room at the front. That's how I could share my rent and build, start again. And actually, it was very entrepreneurial. So that's the thing. Does it help?
Yeah, I see a little hand over there. You could please.
So, good afternoon. Thank you for the presentation. And I would like to ask, because you mentioned you encourage women to become entrepreneurs, like I understand, and you have a community for women, like we can see. Can you see more things about that, and can you see some advice for women who bring
Yeah. So there's two things. There are always a women's club somewhere. There's always among these women, some you will not get along with and some you will love. If in the communities of women that exist, you don't find the right gig, just create it yourself. Start organically and virally. At Community of Women, first it was the community of women who wanted to participate in a social change or environmental change and have an entrepreneurial way to do it. And at that time they didn't either. There was the charity stuff or business, shoulder pads. So they had to form a new group that was at the next. It's as simple as that. If you don't find the right gig, do your own gig. Does it help? And you can start with 2 or 3 people. It's fine. But do something. Don't just do talk. Do something. Does it help at all? Thank you.
Any further questions, ladies and gentlemen? If not, then we will continue on to saying thank you one more time to Servane.